content warning is on screen now. Viewer discretion advised. In the modern age of the internet, we are so used to having instant access to the perspectives of regular people. We're always one click away from seeing a vertical slice of someone's life. But in the early 2000s, it was the exact opposite. Mass media absolutely ruled the world. The only people you would ever see on TV or on the covers of magazines were celebrities. If the average person wanted to get their crazy idea for a TV show out there, odds are they'd have to keep dreaming. But with the advent of the internet, the only thing stopping someone from having their voice heard was learning HTML. And what followed was an extremely humble period in the history of the World Wide Web, one that was very personal and genuine. And speaking of personal, when I was a little kid, I absolutely loved Mario. But I didn't have any Nintendo consoles, so the only time I ever got to see Mario was from looking over other kids' shoulders to see the slightest bit of their Game Boy Advance screen. And that was all it took for me to fall in love with a mustachioed plumber I had never even properly seen, and I had to know more. If I had to guess, I would say this Mario fixation began at some point in 2004 when I was 5 years old. At the time, I didn't have any peers that cared about video games, so there was only one place I could go that was nerdy enough for me to get my Mario fill, and that was the internet. I was able to piece together a rough history of the games and even pick out some of my favorites from a distance. It felt cool to see people writing pages upon pages of Mario trivia just because they wanted to. It was like I joined a secret club of people I had something in common with, and I loved the idea that I could check back later to see if there were any updates. And the experience wouldn't have been the same if somebody had bought me a book about the subject. Books represent something rigid, curated, and complete. It had already gone through 1,000 revisions to make sure it sold as many copies as possible. But web pages were distinct because they closed the gap between the writer and the reader. Sewn throughout the fabric of every Mario fact page were the opinions and quips and feelings of the webmaster, as if I were seeing it through the lens of someone I'm only just getting to know. The web was so sincere back then that it was standard practice for webmasters to have an About Me page, where the writer describes themselves and maybe puts up pictures of their cats. An About Me page wasn't expected, you didn't have to, but it was a nice sentiment, like a passionate enthusiast proudly inviting you into their home and yapping about the stuff they love for as long as you're willing to hear it. I will never forget how deep my stomach sank the first time a website I loved just vanished one day. The major downside of websites is that they are inherently ephemeral. Maybe the webmaster ran out of money or got sick of the maintenance and just pulled the plug. It was like walking to a friend's house and realizing they had moved away without a word, and I'd never seen them again. Now, it might seem silly for me to attach emotion to a stupid webpage about Mario facts written by someone that I've never met, but that's just how the early internet felt. The culture was entirely built around personal emotion. Today, there's a lot of money in cynically designed web pages, ones that are designed not for the love of the game, but solely for the ad revenue. Ads have become so normalized at this point that there are often more ads on web pages than actual content. But back in the days of the early internet, making a page just for ad revenue was a huge faux pas. Web pages represented the voice of the people, and having tons of ads on your page made you a sellout. It made your opinions less valuable. The modern equivalent would be me putting 40 ad breaks in this YouTube video and telling you how cool sports gambling is and that you should totally do it. I would never do that because I value my integrity, but today's sponsor is one that I can feel very good about endorsing. You likely don't know this about me, but I love fragrances, candles, incense, nice soaps, so Azuna is very applicable to my life. They make odor eliminators and air fresheners powered by pure Australian tea tree oil. No fillers, no nonsense. It literally says on the label 100% natural Australian tea tree oil. And what's cool is that it neutralizes odor instead of just layering a scent on top. Azuna has these luxe glass jars with a vented screw top. You pour the gel in, you set it down, screw on the top, and it does its thing for up to 90 days. I've had one sitting next to my Wii U for a little over 2 weeks now, and I love it. It passively keeps my living room smelling like a spa without being overpowering. I also really like that it's refillable and sustainable. I don't have to toss plastic pods all the time. I can just wash the jar and reuse it. And if you want something more immediate, they also have the misting spray, which feels very premium. I live with 2 cats, so I also appreciate that they offer a pet odor eliminator pot specifically for where the wild things are. Consider me amazed at how much of a difference tea tree oil can make to the atmosphere of my home. So if you're interested, head over to azuna.com/clue or click the link below and use code CLUE to get 30% off on your first Azuna order. So For as romanticized as the vibes were back in the early days of the internet, I still vividly remember the dark underbelly to the whole thing. On the early internet, you really couldn't let your guard down. Between all the malware, pop-ups, and shock content, it was like playing Minesweeper. One misplaced mouse click, and it's all over. A lot of people like to use the Wild West analogy for describing the early internet, and that's good for capturing the uncharted lawlessness of it all, but I like to think of it more as a rickety bridge. There's a bridge there, it'll get you across the cavern, but if you fall or the bridge breaks, it's your funeral, buddy. For as raw and earnest as netizens could be, it was somehow equally an unsympathetic time to be online. I'm grateful that I got to learn how to be my own filter from using the early internet, but I certainly would not recommend kids gain that experience firsthand like I did. That would be the equivalent of putting 4chan on your child's iPad. I can't believe I'm old enough now that I have to brace for impact about what Flash Player is. Adobe Flash was a fascinating format. You could have everything from cartoons to movies to games to banner ads that would yell at you.
Say something! Say something! Shut up!
It was the major player in the multimedia age of the internet. All you had to do was install a free browser plugin to get access to a seemingly infinite supply of scrappy content made by netizens just like you. And the way you found Flash movies to watch was on a genre of website called a Flash portal. The way Flash portals worked back then is every submission was entirely manual. You had to email IRC or ICQ the webmaster to ask if they'll post it, and whether they did or not was out of your hands. But the reason Newgrounds stood out among the rest and became so relevant to web culture in the 2000s was that it was the first Flash portal to entirely automate the submission process. Anyone could make a Flash file and upload it to the site, and it would instantly be public, much like how anyone can upload a YouTube video and have it be public. And once those floodgates were open, unsurprisingly, Newgrounds turned into a crowdsourced boundary-pushing experiment. The platform was rapidly filled to the brim with indulgent, bizarre, and subversive garbage. It was like a sleepover with no parents around. You could cuss all the swears, eat junk food, talk about hot girls, and let loose without having to walk on eggshells. No other platform could have worn the everything by everyone tagline more appropriately. It's a vindicating sentiment, but also a warning. It was the perfect representation of the freedom that the internet offered, for better or for worse. But when you set up a platform in which the entire intent is to push boundaries, it was a very slippery slope. I'm sure the Newgrounds moderation staff were working overtime to make sure kids that stumbled onto the site didn't develop 1,000-yard stares. But despite their best efforts, however, Newgrounds absolutely exposed me to stuff I didn't want to see as a kid. But it didn't bother me that much, because so did every other website at the time. I was so accustomed to whenever I saw something tasteless or horrible or shocking, I would just navigate away from it and try something else. The thing that kept me coming back, despite the landmines, was the culture. The reason Newgrounds felt so fresh was because it represented the complete opposite of mass media. Instead of being curated by a team of visionaries, backed by a budget in the millions, made to be enjoyed for years to come, Newgrounds was, for lack of better terminology, a micro-media platform. Media that's usually made by one person with no budget for a very niche demographic that may be here one day and blammed the next. Newgrounds was living proof that indie creators could thrive in an environment where anyone could truly make anything, way before YouTube made that a cornerstone of the internet. It was just the right platform at just the right time, and I'm so grateful that I was there to witness it, even if I suffered a little bit of battle damage along the way. Everything I have just talked about was in service of making me not seem like a sociopath, because I grew up with Mario Flash parodies in which the entire premise was, what if Mario said all the swear words? What if Mario had a gun and blasted the enemies' heads off? What if Mario was evil and killed all his friends with a sword? It was simple. I was a kid. I wanted to play Mario Flash games, and Newgrounds had them. And you would think that the trademark Newgrounds slant would have scared me off, but not really, actually. I knew I was engaging with a discount version of Mario, and I was doing it because it was way better than nothing. Anyone could tell the difference between an official Mario game and a scrappy Flash parody, including me when I was a kid. That's like not being able to tell the difference between SpongeBob and a YouTube poop of SpongeBob. Every parody creator had their own continuity, and it felt like watching someone else play with action figures of their favorite characters. Who cares cares if Mario and Sonic don't exist in the same universe? Whatever, they're fighting now, who's gonna win? But this time it's not powered just by your imagination, it's powered by Flash, and you get to see the violence in all of its crude glory. Even the worst Mario parody creators would be the first to tell you they aren't affiliated with Nintendo. Ultimately, they respect the original works, and they just want the fandom gears to keep turning. It's not like the Mario franchise was the only thing getting desecrated on the internet. Parody culture left no stone unturned, spanning every subject imaginable. But Mario sort of incidentally made for the perfect target for this kind of media, so it felt way more pervasive than any other IP. It's not that much of a surprise. Mario is universally recognizable and incredibly beloved, but also very sanitized. And it's just a fact that there will always be an innate hunger to see beloved characters doing non-canonical things. Nintendo would never indulge in fan service enough to let Mario and Luigi sword fight to the death. But I'm looking at it right now, and it's pretty badass. Speaking of Nintendo, how do you think Nintendo feels about this? Look, we all know how billionaire corporate entities work. I'm not sitting here shocked that internally, Nintendo isn't actually as fun and friendly as their PR managers would have you believe. Go figure. But what does surprise me, time and time again, are the things that Nintendo seems to consider a threat to their brand enough to be worth litigating over. In 2024, the president of Nintendo got up on his soapbox and said they will take action against inappropriate uses of their characters that have the capacity to make people feel uncomfortable. That's not how the internet works, and journalists very rightfully made fun of Nintendo for being so naive. They conveniently didn't elaborate on what they consider inappropriate, but it really doesn't matter. This is Nintendo literally saying the quiet part out loud and justifying using legal threats to control the narrative and censor art they don't like. This is the part where we get to roll our eyes at the fact that Nintendo sent mass copyright infringement notices requesting removal of thousands of Newgrounds Mario parodies in 2024. It started off with just them removing explicit art of Nintendo characters, but as of 2025, their scope has expanded into random shotgun blasts of innocuous Mario parody takedowns. For example, here's a game that Nintendo took legal action against to remove. It's so obviously a shitpost. How can they consider this a threat? And old Newgrounds parodies aren't safe either. Super Mario 63, one of the greatest Flash games ever made, Nintendo took it down in early 2025. No one can convince me that Newgrounds parodies could ever pose enough of a threat to a property to justify legal action. Parody is innately free speech at work. So are fan games, mods, ROM hacks. They're all free speech. Nintendo has their entire perception of fan works completely backwards. Sega, Capcom, Bethesda, they all know the value in encouraging fan works and will do anything to keep those gears turning. They all have instances where they draw the line somewhere, but Nintendo seems to have their line comedically far forward to the point of being oppressive. Imagine if Valve started issuing copyright takedowns to Gmod animations on YouTube. Legally, they'd be within their right to do it, but it would certainly make people think twice before buying games on Steam again. A good PR manager would consider fan works to be fuel for the hype train. It generates free value for the brand in question, regardless of what the content actually is. The example I'm going to give is a bit crass, so please do forgive me. But unironically, fan art of Princess Peach's boobs make people want to buy more Mario games, not less. If the old internet could teach me to navigate away from content that made me uncomfortable when I was 5 years old, why can't Nintendo do the same? It's ridiculous. The early internet is a beautiful example of what we serve to lose when corporate greed is added to the picture. Netizens would write all day long about their favorite video games just because. And when I was a kid, the fact that these people were motivated by nothing but a love of Mario made me want to get into it even more. And to me, there is no greater love letter to a franchise than seeing fan works of it, despite how crude or stupid they may be. I can see it, you can see it, the layman can see it, but the only thing Nintendo could see was red. If there's anything to learn from Sonic the Hedgehog, it's that Sega publicly endorsing fan games is an effective way to supercharge people's interest in the original property. I would say something like, Nintendo should get real comfortable with people not buying their products anymore if they keep treating their fans like this. But it's not like it matters, because even their bootlickers can't afford their products anymore. So it's time to answer the question in the title. What did the internet do to Mario? Well, the internet proved that Nintendo should really change their mascot from Mario to Wario, because they clearly love money more than they love Princess Peach's boobs. Nintendo vying for control of the entire internet's perception of Mario is absurdly unrealistic, and despite their takedowns, the status quo of Nintendo fanworks hasn't changed much. How has Nintendo not heard the Hydra analogy of the internet yet? Cut a head off, and it sprouts 5 more. When fan projects get taken down, they just get re-uploaded to archive.org. When emulators get taken down, they just get forked, and development continues. And in regards to parodies, making Nintendo uncomfortable was a formative part of millions of people's internet experience. And when people want something to exist, it will exist. I will always love buggy, scrappy Mario Flash games. I will always think Mario and Luigi sword fighting kicks ass. And I will always want free speech to allow people to make parodies of whatever their heart desires. My sense of humor will forever be Super Mario with angry eyebrows cussing a swear in a speech bubble. Even if Nintendo tried to send a cease and desist to my own brain, no one is going to take that away from me. Now it's time to open the packages that were sent to my P.O. Box address that's in the channel description. Thank you to Michael for the lovely letter, a second round of My Arcade Femi clones, and a bonus Paw Patrol plug and play. Thank you to Jason for the VTech Socrates. I'll be featuring this in my upcoming VTech Rabbit Hole video. Thank you to Django for the postcard. Thank you to Ethan for the lovely letter and the art. I couldn't think of any Nintendo stuff to send, but if I find something, I'll let you know. Thank you to Devin for the 2001 Ice IB robot dog from Hasbro. It's in incredible condition and it works great, especially with the new battery. Well done. And also from Devin, we've got what I assumed were some pullback racers, but they don't seem to work very well, some sort of robot dog from the year 2000 with cute beady eyes, and finally, a Start Right IQ bot. Definitely gonna give that a go. Thank you to everyone that sent packages to my P.O. Box, thank you to everyone on patreon.com/clue, and I'll see you again real soon.